Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the ROKER Report podcast in association with the Sunderland Community Soup Kitchen. It's Gav back today to chat about what we believe may be Sunderland's greatest League One team. So I'm joined today by Chris Wynn. Hi Chris.
Alright Gav, how's it going mate?
Yeah, not bad. So me and you, we're going to go through basically each of the squads that Sunderland had in League One over our 4-year stint, and we're going to try and pick the best possible team that we can. Now that might be a little bit more difficult than some of the listeners believe, because although we've been in this league for 4 years, we have had some poor players, we haven't had quite as many good players. So what we're going to try and do is put together a starting 11 of players that we feel is the best on merit, rather than doing a player of the year type podcast or trying to work out who we think might have been the worst players. We're going for the best ones today. And I think we should probably start, Chris, with a formation. Off air, we had a little chat. You've got one in mind already. I'm a little bit more flexible. I've just got a big list of players that I think could potentially make this team. But you've went with a 3 at the back formation with wing backs, I believe.
Yeah, well, the problem is, when you jot down all of the players who you think, well, they're at the top of the list, they have to be in the 11.
Yeah.
I've ended up top heavy on all of those. And actually, but when you write them down just as a list, you realise how many cracking attacking players we've had in 4 years of League One. And actually, the resounding feeling was, why didn't we get promoted sooner? Because actually, there's some cracking players in there.
Yeah, I'm with you. And also, you talk about the amount of cracking attacking players we've had. You then look further down the list, and we will go position by position, but you look further down the list, there's a bit of a dearth of decent defenders there. There's not that many, is there? Which might actually point to the overall Sunderland League One story, and that we just haven't been as good enough defensively to get out quicker. And I think that probably tells in some of the players that we've got in these positions.
You're probably onto something there, because I've actually got listed, I've got more specialised attacking midfielders that play behind the striker than I have centre-halves when I've listed them all down. So it probably tells you everything, that.
Yeah, we're going with a back 5. First and foremost, I'm happy with that system. So we'll go first off with goalkeepers then. So in League One, we've had a number of number ones. Starting off, we had John Mclaughlin playing under Jack Ross, who came in from Hearts. I think was in the Scottish Team of the Year the season that we signed him. So he was a top player. Following him, after he left after 2 seasons, we had Lee Burch. And then latterly this season, we've sort of flitted between Burch, then Hoffman, then Anthony Pattson, who ended the season as our number 1, playing in the playoff final. So let's go through those options then. I only wrote down 2 names for goalkeepers.
Yeah, I noticed that.
This should be interesting to see what you think. But I didn't include Lee Burch. I think although Lee Burch is a steady away League One goalkeeper, there was never a moment in his time at the club where I felt that he was good enough. He was all right. He was steady away, but like I say, never really good enough. So the 2 names I've got written down, Chris, are John Mclaughlin and Anthony Pattson.
Yeah, I'd go with those 2 as the kind of main picks. But I mean, just quickly to touch on the other 2, because I think it is fair enough to put those in the mix. Lee Burch, I felt a little bit sorry for Lee Burch at the time. He came with a good reputation from Coventry. Coventry fans were like, oh, he's a good keeper, and he'll do well for you and all this sort of stuff. And I think there's a cracking keeper in there. I remember being at Bramall Lane for the League Cup game under Jack Ross, and he was brilliant that night. I mean, he kept us in the game. He made some cracking saves. One up, because I was in one of the front rows. One was down low to his right hand side, and he did really well to get down to it. And I thought, oh, we've got a cracking keeper here, and he had a hell of a kick as well. I think he got the assist for the goal that night. But I just think he was one of these players, and we've seen it time and time again. We'll probably see it with some of the other players as we go through as well. I think Lee Burch was gobbled up by the size of Sunderland and being our number 1. And I think he just got drowned in the pressure of kind of being the club's main man in goal and couldn't quite handle it and kept making mistakes. Hoffman is another one. I think if he played a full season, I think, it'd be interesting to see, if he played, all of the games this season, whether we'd be saying, let's get him signed and all this sort of stuff. Who knows what he would have went on to if he hadn't gotten COVID and all this sort of stuff. He might have done really well under Alex Neil playing behind that back 4. Because I think that's helped Pattson. I think playing under Alex Neil, I think if Pattson had done the same under Lee Johnson, I think he might have, with playing under the system where we conceded a lot of chances. I'm not sure Hoffman might have getting more of a crack of the whip playing under Alex Neil, but we'll never know. But yeah, so for me, it's John McLaughlin. I thought that especially the first half of our first season in League One, he was way ahead of any other goalkeeper in League One. He was completely playing under himself, if you like, in League One. He was much better than that level. And for that, I mean, he would be my number one for our time in League One.
Yeah, I mean, I could make the case for Anthony Pattson in that he was part of the team that got the job done and played such a huge part in that final with his save from Sam Vokes. I think Pattson, for me, just talking on this last season, Anthony Pattson, to me, has been the most improved player in the Sunderland squad by a country mile. I think back to when he first came into the team compared to when he's come out of it, he commands his box better, he's better with his feet, he's got great reflexes, and importantly, I mean, you were talking about Lee Burch there. To be honest, my sort of overall memory of Lee Burch is the mistakes, unfortunately, and Pattson, to me, doesn't look like he's got mistakes in him, and that's a mark of a good keeper. League One goalkeepers have mistakes in them. Anthony Pattson certainly doesn't seem to have that in him. Having said that, I think just for the length of time that he played well, I've got to also go with John Mclaughlin. And to be honest, I'm really disappointed that he went to Rangers and hasn't played, because he's far better than being a number 2 in the Scottish Premiership. He's a Championship goalkeeper, at least. I actually thought at one stage he was playing at the level where I would have thought, I remember saying, actually, I think I got a little bit of pelters for it, but I remember saying that John Mclaughlin was playing at that time as good as a Premier League goalkeeper, because I'd watched Premier League goalkeepers throwing the ball in consistently down towards the bottom end of the Premier League, the weaker teams, and I was thinking, well, there's no way he's any worse than some of the lads who are playing in the Prem. So to me, John Mclaughlin has to take that honour, and yeah, I'm just disappointed that he left Sunderland to be a number 2 somewhere in that. Yeah. I was sort of like thinking about it the other day, thinking, I wonder if he's available this summer to come back maybe. But yeah, I think we're pretty much in agreement on that one. John McLaughlin is Sunderland's greatest League One goalkeeper. One thing we didn't say at the top, by the way, we are talking specifically about League One here. We're not also bringing in the season in the third tier under Dennis Smith.
Absolutely.
One, I wasn't around at that time. And 2, it's, yeah.
To be fair though, Gav, McLaughlin would still get in, I think, over Ian Hesford. And
Okay then, so because we went with a 3 at the back with wing-back system, we'll go to the centre-halves.
Yeah.
And we said, didn't we, that there aren't a great amount of defenders to pick from. So we've got 3 central defenders to pick here. Obviously, there are a couple of players who played more than one position for us. So we've got, for instance, Carl Winchester has played centre-half this season and done very well. You could include him. My shortlist, though, I've got Bailey Wright, obviously, Danny Bart, Jordan Willis, Dion Sanderson, and lastly Tom Flanagan. Is there anybody I've missed off there that you think deserves an honourable mention?
Yeah, if he'd had a full season playing at that level, you'd have Callum Doyle in, but I think how much he tailed off, he probably doesn't. It's probably worth a mention, but he doesn't quite make the shortlist, I guess, for selection. But yeah, I'd go with that. The other one you could probably say you could play at the back. You mentioned Winchester, because I thought that back end of when Lee Johnson came in, I thought 09 carried us when he had to fill in at the back.
Good shout. Yep, good shout.
I've got him in, well, we'll see later on where I've got him, but yeah, that sounds like the list for me. I don't think there's anyone else we can really add to that shortlist.
Yeah, there are players I've enjoyed watching play centre-half, even though I wouldn't put them on the list. I actually quite liked Ali Mozturk for a little stint. When we were so bad under Jack Ross with Baldwin and Flanagan at centre-half, he just came out of nowhere, and he played in the playoff final, so you kind of forget he actually did make a little bit of an impact, Ali Mozturk, and I was a little bit disappointed that he left. I don't think he was anything special, but he was steady away. He was a kick it and head it centre-half, and sometimes that's what you need. I mean, that's even this season in January, we had to go out and buy Danny Bart because that's what we were missing. So if I'm going to give anyone an honourable mention, it might be Ozturk.
Yeah, maybe considering what he's got on to. Jimmy Dunn showed glimpses, but I think the others played better than him in a red and white strip. But considering what he went on to, you could see in flashes that he was better than that. But
I like them more than most, to be honest. He got a bit of flack. I was at it was Barnsley away. I think we were like 2 of the teams going for the automatics that season. And it was the game where the wind was horrendous. Like, it was lucky the game wasn't called off. And he was brilliant that night because the ball, you didn't know where it was going half the time. And it was, the centre-halves had the hardest job on the pitch. And we kept a clean sheet. And I actually thought that he was all right. So, yeah, possibly. I just don't think he played enough. But anyways, we'll go on to who we've actually picked. And this should be quite interesting because I'm torn on a couple of players. So, for instance, Tom Flanagan, I didn't really like Flanagan for most of his time at the club, but then the first half of this season under Lee Johnson, I thought that was the best period he had in the Sunderland shirt. Jordan Willis is another one who looked a class above until he got injured and played that sort of right, I don't know what the position is, really under Parkinson, where he played on the right of the three, but he got forward and sort of played a bit like a right back as well. And that was probably the best he was for Sunderland. Then obviously there's Dion Sanderson, who took a little while to get going here and ended up looking a class apart till he ended up going back to Wolves, and he's gone on to play in the Championship. Danny Bart, who started slowly because he came here, I think, injured, and very rapidly, though, became an integral part of the team this season. And then Bailey Wright, another who has had his hairy moments, to be fair. There's been times where he's been out of the team, he wasn't good enough, struggled with fitness and stuff, but this year has really came into his own, and you could make a strong case for Bailey Wright to be Sun's Player of the Year this year. So I'll let you go first then. Who were the three that you picked?
I did wonder whether you were going to go on with your three there, but I've gone with Bailey Wright. I've gone with him in the middle of the three because I thought actually in that position under Parkinson, actually he was one of the highlights of the Parkinson era when he played in the middle of a three. I thought he was an unbelievable defender, and it's amazing actually when I looked into it. He's played 91 games for Sunderland, and it's amazing how many games he's actually rattled through because he's had his injuries, suspensions, and all that sort of stuff, and he's been out of favour for a bit, but he's played a lot of games for us. So yeah, I think Bailey Wright was probably my first one I wrote down at the back. I think thinking about our, in years to come when we think about our League One stay, when we're going to think about defenders, Bailey Wright against Sheffield Wednesday with kind of blood pouring down his face is going to be one of our first thoughts, I think. So he gets the nod. You mentioned Jordan Willis. I've gone for Jordan Willis. I just thought, he had the injury and that's just pure bad luck. But when he played for us, I can't really remember him putting a foot wrong. I just thought he looked better than League One. And like you said, he under Parkinson as well, he played that role where he always played it wide and all he did was bomb on. Reminded us a bit of Gary Bennett. He just kind of steamed forward when he played the ball. And whether he was told to or not, I don't know, but he loved doing it. But I think the crowd loved it as well. It kind of picked him up. When he got the ball, you knew that he was going to pass it and he was just going to bomb on and something might happen. So I've got Jordan Willis. He's another one as well. When I looked into it, 60 games. You wouldn't have thought he played that many games before he got injured, but he played a lot of games for us. The other one, I think maybe more controversial with some of the others who was maybe around a bit more, but I've gone for Dion Sanderson. I thought it was criminal when he first came in that Parkinson didn't really play him because I don't think Parkinson actually wanted him. I think he wanted more experienced, big centre-halves who've been there and done it, and he was handed Dion Sanderson, and he only had to play him in the end because of injuries.
Yeah.
And when he did, he couldn't drop him because he was so good. But again, he's another one that week after week, game after game, I remember us talking about doing match reviews, match reports on the pods after games. And all we were talking about was how good Dion Sanderson was. Even if we'd won 2-0 and someone had scored 2 goals, we were talking about Dion Sanderson. And, it was one of those who we all wanted to sign last summer, but knew it wasn't really going to happen with how much it would cost to bring him in and all that sort of stuff. So that's my 3: Dion Sanderson, Bailey Wright, and Jordan Willis.
The only one I'm a little bit torn on is Willis. I know he was. I can't disagree with anything you've just said, but when I look at that as a back three, it's very small, and one of the big bugbears throughout my time watching Sunderland in League One has been the complete lack of height in the team. So for me, I would personally put Danny Bart in there. I would probably play him through the middle. Right, just on the right of him, and then I would put Sanderson to the left, and that would be a very varied, mobile, quality defence. The only thing with Willis I found was that he would occasionally get caught out of position. I actually think if you go 20 years back and put Jordan Willis into the game, he wouldn't be a centre half. He'd probably be a full back. He'd probably be your stereotypical right back, quite rugged and hard, but also had a little bit of pace and could mix it up. I just think in League One you need that big man through the middle. So if it was down to me, I would go with Danny Bart over Jordan Willis. But I'm happy to sway based on what you think. We've got to pick one of them, Bart or Willis.
I just think Danny Bart played 11 games for us. So if you're talking about our best team in League One,
but got us promoted. Look at all the clean sheets. The clean sheets are the thing that I go back to. You know, he come into the team, we started keeping clean sheets.
He did, and I don't know if you're talking about what they did for us and how they played. If you're talking to us player for player, who would I pick? And you're right about Jordan Willis. I think he started out as a fullback at Coventry, and I think they moved him inside as he got a bit older. But I think that role for him, if you're playing him in a 3 alongside someone like Bailey Wright, like he played under Parkinson, I just think Danny Bath, is likely to get caught out for pace, and Jordan Willis was pretty quick. So it'd still be, if I had to pick between the two, it wouldn't be much in it, but I'd go for Willis purely. I think I've got memories of Gary Bennett steaming forward, and that's what I'd go for.
Well, on this one, we'll go with Willis. I might have to bend you for one of the other positions, right. But to be honest, there's not a lot between them. Like I say, they both got totally different skill sets. Danny Bart is big, tough, solid, doesn't let much past him. Willis is a bit more mobile. Like I say, you would have to move that back 3 around a little bit to fit in Bart, but. We'll go with Willis. I don't think there's anything much between them. We'll probably, after this pod, put it out on Twitter and see what people think about who should be in the team. That's the back 3 sorted. We'll now go to I think right back or right wing back in this system. First off, we haven't had that many good right backs. That was the first thing that I've noticed, is that we're struggling a little bit, and I think this one might be easy to pick based on just the choice. So I sent you my shortlist earlier, but I'm adding someone to that now. You can probably hear me typing, so I've got that down. So, shortlist. Adam Matthews, I think in that first season, he was all right. I mean, he only had really one good season for Sunderland, and it was pretty much that one. Lyndon Gooch, I've put in there because of his sort of contribution towards the end of the season, in a similar way to Bart. You know, you put him right back, just even that final little run towards the end of the season, and he did do very well. Conor Mcglothlin, I've put down tentatively, had a bad first season and a good second season. Carl Winchester, who has had a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde season for us at right back. He started brilliantly. Like I actually at one stage thought this guy is immense at right back, but then it seemed to tail off a little bit, and he lost his place there and ended up playing a different role, didn't he, under Alex Neil. And then, last but not least, the man I've just added to my list, Luke O'Nien, who in that first season in League One was arguably our player of the season, playing right back. So it's another toughie, because I've just given you 5 names there. Only one of them you could argue had a standout season playing that position, but you could put this same player, Luke O'Nien, in 2 or 3 positions, really. That's that I can see you thinking now.
The 09 one's thrown us. I did, because I had 09 as a possible centre half or in midfield, and I'd never thought about having him on the right hand side. But
let's talk about him specifically, right? So those 3 positions, those are probably the 3 main positions he's played. I know he's played pretty much everywhere, but at centre half, he had a couple of decent games there as a fill-in player. Central midfield, to be honest, he's only really became a centre mid this season, and even then he's played all over the place. But that first season under Jack Ross at right back, I mean, he was. I actually remember we used to get the Instat reports every week in that season. We had a subscription to Instat, and he was statistically the best right back in the EFL that season, like on everything, contributions, defensive, tackles, headers, everything. So it's, for me, I think I'm edging for Luke O'Nien, to be honest. Is there an honourable mention there, or is there anybody who? I mean, you obviously didn't have Luke O'Nien written down, so I'm wondering who you had.
No, I had exactly the same list as you, which it was kind of slim pickings, which is why, I mean, you're saying you're going for 09, and you're starting to talk us into it, because the name I had written down, and maybe because of the the list we had was Lyndon Gooch, because I think that's actually his position now. I think that right back role is his position. I think over the years he's been pushed back. You know, when we came into League One, he was an attacking winger where he used to kind of get to the byline and get the ball in and take players on. And first half of the first Jack Ross season, that he was fantastic, and that's why we were so good in the first half of that season. Quite a lot of that was down to the former Lyndon Gooch. And then suddenly he disappeared and he kind of came back and forgot what kind of player he was, and he had to turn himself into something slightly different. And I think this season that's been his best position. And when he's up for it, when he's on it, like Lyndon Gooch, and I imagine he's probably one of the best in the league, certainly this season, in that position, because, you know, he doesn't put a foot wrong when he's on it. I mean, you saw that the Cambridge game, he can still take players on, he can still get to the byline, still put a good cross in. But yeah, the more you talk about Luke O'Nien, the more it makes sense. He was fantastic in that first season. I actually think if push came to shove, and I had to pick what Luke O'Nien's best position has been for Sunderland in League One, I'd probably say centre half, because some of those performances under Lee Johnson, when we were desperate, you know, when all of our centre halves were injured, he stepped in and went to the back, and you'd just think he'd played there all his life. You know, he was in some games, he was kind of our only defender. In some games, he was kind of leading the line. He was getting his head on it. He was putting his body in the way. So push came to shove, I'd probably say his best position for Sunderland's being centre half. But the more you talk about Luke O'Nien on the right, and kind of those stats that season, which I remember seeing, I think you're talking us into it. I think I might go for Luke O'Nien on the right.
Yeah, I think we're going to agree on that one. He's best position for me, I know you said centre half, but for me was right back. Although I like him, I quite like him in the centre of the park, and I think in this system with the manager we've got now, it really suits him. But if we're just talking about the 4 seasons he's had as a Sunderland player, I don't think many people would disagree when I say his best season was his first season playing right back. So yeah, we'll go with that then. Next position then, left backs. Again, we haven't had a great amount of decent left backs while we've been in League One. We've definitely had some shockers. I mean, names that come to mind are Lawrence de Bock, Jake Vokins, and last but not least, Callum McFadden, the player who I deem is probably the worst to ever play in a Sunderland shirt. But in terms of decent left backs, we've had, I would say, 3, and I think even then I'm pushing it, because I'm not sure how well 2 of these lads actually played for us consistently. But my list was Brian Oviedo, who in that first season was pretty much our first choice left back. I think at times looked a class apart, at times looked like he couldn't be arsed. But, I mean, in terms of quality, he definitely had more than enough to play at this level. Denver Hume, who probably played his best football for Sunderland under Phil Parkinson, which you can't say about very many players, that they played their best football under Parkinson, but I think Denver Hume definitely did. That was probably the most consistent run he had in the team, and he was contributing and playing every week. And then, last but not least, and the man I would probably put there in my team is Dennis Sirkin, who I think Dennis Sirkin, particularly under Alex Neil, has improved a great deal. I wasn't totally sold on him, and I'm still a little bit sceptical about how effective he is as a forward attacking option. And in this system we're picking here, he needs to be able to get forward and contribute. But I think defensively he's very, very solid, and you can see why he came so highly rated and why we took the punt on him. So I'll wait to hear what you've said before I make a pick. I'm edging towards Sirkin though.
Yeah, the only I can't remember if you mentioned him. The only other name I'd maybe mentioned was Rhys James. I can't remember whether you mentioned him.
But, no, I didn't. I forgot about him.
But I don't think he was as bad as most people made out. I think he had some good days where he showed himself to be a good player, and he went on to, you know, he was doing well at Doncaster until Doncaster, you know, dropped away like they did. But
you know, just on him though, Rhys James, he actually reminds me a little bit of Sirkin in that he was probably better defensively than he was going forward. In that season, we had 3 left backs. Obviously, we had him, we had Brian Oviedo, and we had Hume. And of the 3, he was probably the most consistent in that position. And then it's funny, he's went on to play elsewhere, hasn't he? And hasn't actually played left back.
Yeah,
I think he played in midfield, didn't he?
Yeah, attacking midfielder, I think, at Doncaster for a while.
Which blows my mind a little bit because, like I say, I thought he was more defensive minded, but I think he's at Blackpool now in the Championship, so he got there quicker than we did, anyways. So.
But yeah, I mean, the list you had was spot on. I don't think there's anybody else. There was only James that sprang to mind. But yeah, and at the top of the list, the top two for me, I think it was between Oviedo, like you said, because on his day he was a cut above. I thought he just showed his class when he was on it, when he could be bothered. Like you said, I remember, was it Portsmouth or someone at home where he just lashed out at someone and got sent off?
It was Peterborough.
Peterborough, that was it.
He wellied Marcus Madison up the arse.
That was it.
For no reason, and pretty much cost us the game by doing that.
Yeah.
We were on top, we were dominating the game, and it was that time was a big game. I think they were challenging with us up near the top of the table. And he just wellied him up the arse for no reason. But then you're on about his class. The one that springs to mind immediately is that first game in League One when he put the ball in for Gooch's header.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was when you were like, sometimes in a game you need that quality player just to give you a moment. That's what he gave us.
And you know what? That sending off against Peterborough, I was going to say that pretty much summed up where Oviedo's head was playing for Sunderland, because he didn't want to play for us in League One. And every time he lost the ball, he was frustrated because he thought, I'm better than this and I'm better than these players. I shouldn't be losing the ball. And that frustration was purely that, because he thought he was better than the players he was playing against. And he was. If he didn't really show it week in, week out because he couldn't be bothered. So for that reason, I'm probably going with you. Dennis Sirkin for me on the left.
Yeah, I think that one was pretty straightforward. We'll jump into the centre of midfield, although we haven't really talked about the formation. So you went with one holding player and 3 attacking midfielders. Yeah. But has that changed since we've moved Luke O'Nien or not?
No, I had Luke O'Nien in that holding midfielder role, but now I'm going to
go with someone else.
Yeah.
Well, I think what we'll probably do is we should maybe talk about how many players have we got to pick from here?
A lot.
Well, we've got 5 positions, haven't we, pretty much, if we're going to go with 2 strikers, potentially.
Well, I've got one up front.
You've got one up front, right. Okay. Let's just go to centre mids then. So I'll be honest, I could probably make the case for most of these players because they all contributed in similar ways. I'll just start from the top. Max Power, not somebody who I was particularly enamoured with as a Sunderland player, not as much as many other fans were, but he was important to us for 3 years. He played quite a lot of football. And actually, it's just coming to mind now, he did play quite a lot of football at right back at one stage, so we could have even included him in that list. Lee Cattermole, who in that first season probably had his best season for Sunderland, scored, I think, 7 or 8 goals, didn't he, from midfield, which was never part of his game when we played further up the leagues. And at a time when the club was probably at its lowest ebb, we needed leaders on the pitch. He did stand up, he did give us quite a lot, but then missed that important spot kick, which decided our fate in the penalty shootout in the first playoff final we played in. George Honeyman, who was our captain when we dropped to League One, player I loved, still love, wish he would come back. I know that a lot of people listening to this will be tearing their hair out on me saying that, but I like George Honeyman. I think the fact he's went to Hull and the love him there as well shows a great deal about what he's like. And I think we would have been a lot better off for him at Sunderland over the last 3 seasons he's been gone or whatever it's been. Luke O'Nien was on me centre mids list, but it no longer is because we picked him at right back. Corey Evans, who is another Marmite player. He had a pretty poor start to life here as he struggled for form and fitness, but since Alex Neil's came in, has been unbelievable. Rode through a sticky period where everybody wanted him out the team. I even remember, I can't remember what the home game was, but he was booed off when he was subbed. That's how sort of the opinions changed on Corey Evans. And then last but not least, a player who's probably had the opposite kind of season to Corey Evans, Dan Neil, who started like a steam train this season, taking all the plaudits, scoring goals, getting assists. He won our Young Player of the Year this year, which is important to factor in. But since the new manager came in, has probably been off the bench once or twice, and that's it. Which is disappointing, but he definitely deserves to be mentioned on this list. And I'll probably throw in Elliot Embleton there as well. I know you could probably put him in amongst with the attacking midfield players, but this season he's played between that sort of 10 position and central midfield, and again another under Alex Neil, who's just got better and better, and scored a really important goal in the playoff final, which set the tone for the rest of the afternoon. Had he not showed the initiative to run at them and shoot, might have been a very different game. So I've went over quite a lot of players there. You've only gone with one central midfielder, so I want to hear what you've got to say before I put my threatening bit in.
Yeah, I was frantically trying to think when you were rattling all the names off. I'm only gonna go for one out of this list of players. But it is actually. But again, you look at this and you think that's a good list of players. There's some good players in there. I mean, how did we not get up sooner? That most of those players are better than League One, and it took us 4 years to get out. But it might be controversial this because all of those players that you mentioned probably did more than this player in terms of amount of games and probably better, longer runs that, where he was in form and all this sort of stuff. But for that holding role, I'm going to go for Corey Evans. I just think, the way he's played in the second half of this season, the bottom line is he got the job done. He almost got us promoted the way he played because in this system that Alex Neil played, I mean, you saw it against Wycombe. There was a sniff of anyone getting in behind the defence, and every time Corey Evans was there, he was on the ball, he read the play, he's been there and done it. And he had a huge bad patch. And the other thing I was going to say with Corey Evans is how many players do you see come back from being booed at Sunderland? Not many. Not many players turn it around.
True.
Yeah,
true.
Once they've got on the wrong side of the fans and the fans have had enough of them, it's kind of, that's it. They're normally never to be seen again and they leave on a free in the summer or something like that. They can't handle it. Not many players can come back from, that sort of treatment that Corey Evans got where people were saying he needs to come out the team and all this sort of stuff. And he's not only just come back and been okay and slotted in, he's been so important that he was one of the main players that stopped Wycombe from playing at Wembley, and Wycombe couldn't really do anything against us, create any chances. A lot of that was down to Corey Evans. And, Ledbetter was brilliant at times. Definitely, you've got to put Ledbetter in there because he kind of ran the show in games under Parkinson in the role that he played in that kind of playing in front of the back three. Cattermole had that good season, like you said, 7 or 8 goals. Max Power played 137 games for us in the end. I mean, a lot of games. And he got us close. I mean, a lot of people, we did the podcast with Max Power and there was the odd comment saying, he did this and he did that. But, he got us close to the promotion. He wasn't that far away. So he could have easily been in there. But just for what he did and how he got us over the line, I'm going to go for Corey Evans.
It's a tough one for me, this, because like I said, I really liked George Honeyman, particularly that first season. He played more in sort of a midfield too, didn't he, with Cattermole. Cattermole, I think you've got to give him credit for that season. He played, I think, 29 league games and got 7 goals from midfield, which is a hefty contribution. But at the same time, I was thinking about it earlier. I was thinking, well, how many of those were really important goals? I can't think of any moment where those goals were like big moments in games. I might be wrong. Someone listening to this might be able to correct us, but
if you look back at the highlights of that first season, though, how many times Cattermole was chasing back because he got done for pace. Someone just knocked the ball past him, and that was it. He was just chasing back, and they were behind our midfield because he just couldn't run anymore by that point. And he got it. He bagged a few goals, but by that time, I think he was finished really.
Yeah. So go on then. We'll go with Corey Evans. I can't really argue against it. I think if you're on about an out-and-out holding player, he's been a class apart, particularly towards this run towards the end of the season. And there was a point where I thought he wasn't up to it, but I think from what I've seen, particularly towards the end of the season, he's going to be more than capable of playing next season in the Championship. And you've got to look at his career before he came to Sunderland. I mean, this was pretty much his only season as a League One player. I might be wrong. I don't know. Maybe earlier in his career when he played for Blackburn, maybe they did drop into League One for a little bit, didn't they?
Yeah.
So maybe he did. I don't know. But to me, he's got the hallmarks of a decent Championship player. And I'll go with you on that one with Corey Evans. So that then means that we've just missed out a load of players as centre midfielders, but means that we can then pick more attacking players. Now, you said that you've gone with one up front.
Yeah, so I've got 3 behind the striker. I've gone with one either side, and I've got one just
right,
behind.
Right, okay. Go on then. I'll let you crack on because there's that many players to talk about that.
Well, again, I had what 2, 4, 6. I had kind of 7 or 8 written down for centre half. For attacking midfielder, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I've got 9 or 10 written down. You could put in an attacking midfielder.
I've only got 5, so maybe I'm being a little bit more selective than you. So I'm interested to hear what you've got to say.
Well, if you're talking about kind of, because I've got two wide positions and one behind the striker, I've got Diaku, Honeyman, McGeady, Maguire, Jones, Clark, Roberts, Pritchard. You could stick O'Brien behind there, although he was kind of half on and half off the list. He was just someone I was just scribbling down. Even Broadhead, if you wanted to, you could stick in that left-hand side position. He played there a few times.
I think you've been kind to a few of those players. Jordan Jones. Christ. Diaku.
Well, I was just jotting players down who could play there. I'm not saying all of those.
Go on then, pick your three anyways.
Right, so the three, I mean, I reckon, and I kind of preempted you with your Honeyman suggestion, but I haven't gone Honeyman. I'm going to have to apologise in advance to you for not going for Honeyman. But I've gone for McGeady on the left, because I just, for what he's done for us in League One, he's kind of stayed with us. At one point, it was a kind of a one-man band desperately trying to drag us into the Championship, and it was Aidan McGeady. You know, at times it was like, I always remember Premier Passions, you know, Peter Reid on the sideline shouting, "Give it to Waddler." And it was exactly the same with McGeady. It was just give him the ball and he'll try and do something for us. So McGeady goes in that left-hand side position. I don't think, well, I'd like to think not many people would argue what he's done for us, you know, regardless that he didn't really play much of a part in us actually getting promoted, which is a bit of a shame. But yeah, what he's done, he goes in the 11. In the centre, right behind the striker, I've got Pritchard. I just think, again, another player who shouldn't be in League One and is only in League One because he's playing for Sunderland. And he's just been, well, he's just been a revelation this season. He's just been in that role. Every team's worried about him. Every team has to come up with a plan for him. The stuff he's come up with this season, and he was one of the main reasons we finally got over the line. So Pritchard gets the nod in that central role. And then on the other side, it was tough because he is where I thought, well, on the right hand side, do I go Honeyman? Does Maguire get a nod for some of the important goals he got? You know, Clark was good towards the end of the season, although he had a few off days. But I've gone for Patrick Roberts. I just think his form towards the end of this season, and again, he's another one who I hope stays with us and kind of carries on this form, because I just think he's a cracking player, and if he can get a good run of games, which he's getting this season, he can show what he can do. I mean, 93rd minute, or was it earlier than that? Something 90th minute anyway.
Yeah,
Hillsborough,
93rd minute. Yeah.
Absolutely knackered. The defender, the kind of ran their nuts off for 90 minutes, and he was there at the back post running from the halfway line, making that run. And I just think he's another one who's played a massive part in the fact that we're a Championship club now. He gets the nod on the right, so that's me three. I've got Roberts, Pritchard, and McGeady behind the striker.
Don't disagree with McGeady at all. Arguably our best player in our time in this league, arguably. Don't disagree with Alex Pritchard. I think if we're going to pick a number 10, he's certainly done more than probably Honeyman has in that time. But I can't go with Patrick Roberts on the right. As much as I like him, and I think he's a great player, and you've just made some great points, and don't disagree with any of that. I just think when you look at the fact Chris Maguire scored 28 goals in 125 games for us, and quite a lot of them were important goals, and he played that sort of mercurial attacker role in our squad at a time when we had very little quality, some boring football under Parkinson where he was scoring important goals, and then obviously I know towards the end under Lee Johnson he was cut out of the team. But if we're on about a Sunderland team over 4 years in League One, for me, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't include Chris Maguire in there. I know all the arguments against him, like he would go missing. His last season with the club didn't go particularly well because Lee Johnson just didn't fancy him. All these things are true, but I just think that if we're talking about important goals, I think about you mentioned Roberts' goal there at Hillsborough, but I think of like how good Maguire was in those two legs against Portsmouth to get us to he basically got us to the final that year with his performances across those two legs. Totally shithoused them in both games. Scored a brilliant was it a volley or a half volley at the Stadium of Light to give us that lead going to Fratton Park. There's countless other moments during his time at the club that I can think of off the top of my head. That I think he scored a really good volley against Southend from about 30 yards. There's the less than spectacular goals that he scored, and I think obviously we might have our memories slightly tainted of him because of the hat-trick he scored for Lincoln this season, which totally ruined our day. And he didn't go about in the best of fashions. He celebrated in front of Lee Johnson to try and prove a point and all the rest of it. But if I'm just talking about players who've contributed, if you're mentioning Aidan McGeady, you've got to mention Chris Maguire for me, because they're both they're pretty neck and neck for me in terms of overall contributions for Sunderland during our time in the third tier.
Right. You've talked us into it. You've made a good argument there because, but I think for me, it's pound for pound, Roberts is a better player than Maguire.
Yeah.
Totally. That's a fact, and that was the route I was going down. But now you've brought back all those memories of all those things. I mean, actually, to be fair, the two against Portsmouth, he didn't just get the goal in that first leg, but in that second leg at Fratton Park, I mean, he was the wind-up merchant we were all looking for, wasn't he? I mean, that was kind of what we wanted at that point, and he kind of he basically rattled the fans and the players to the point where they forgot that they were playing in a football game, and we sneaked into the playoff final. But you go on then. You've talked us into it. I'll have Maguire on the right-hand side. But like I said, pound for pound, if you just went better player, I'd go for Robert.
Yeah. So then, strikers, again, we haven't had many great strikers at this level, but we've had two in particular who've done very, very well for us. So I think we'll go with the honourable mentions before we get into the two.
I'd go three.
Three, you reckon? Broadhead, I presume, is one of them?
No. Well, if you're going to go three, I'd say Ross Stewart, I'd say Charlie White and Josh Madger.
Of course. I didn't even have Madger written down. When I was going to talk about sort of honourable mentions, I was thinking more along the lines of Nathan Broadhead.
Yeah.
And trying to think who else have we had who you could possibly stick on that list?
No, I'm struggling after that. I mean,
Lafferty got a handful of goals, but I wouldn't even call him an honourable mention. He wasn't here long enough.
I've got 4 names written down. I've got Stewart, White, Madger and Broadhead.
Yeah. I think that's pretty much it, isn't it? Yeah. To be fair, though, you've got to think like Charlie White was he played pretty much consistently for 2.5 years, so it's not like we've had loads of crap strikers. We've pretty much played one up front right throughout our time in League One, and we've never deviated from the same players too often. So, but I had totally forgot about Madger, and I don't know how, because you think that he was so good in that first half of the season. I think it would be fair to say if we kept a hold of him, we probably wouldn't have went down the playoff route that year. Yeah. That's how important he was to us. So yeah, Jesus, I totally skipped my mind. I mean, it feels like years and years since he was here. So yeah, I mean, Josh Madger is an honourable mention at least.
Well, I think the other thing to mention is you were talking about, because we only played Charlie White up front basically on his own for, like you said, a season and a half or something like that. But I think the whole thing about buying Will Grigg is that it kind of burnt us a little bit. We didn't want to go out and splash the cash on a big striker after that, because we'd done it and it went wrong. So after that, we kind of just, I don't know, we were a bit strange in the transfer market with strikers after that, because we thought, well, a big player in Josh Madger, I mean, just going back to him, I mean, 16 goals in 25 starts before he left that season. I mean, you could almost say that we can be pretty confident we would have went up in that first year if we kept hold of Josh Madger. I know it's everyone says it, but it's true. If we kind of managed to hold on to him, or even sell him and said, look, can we just keep him for the first 5 months on loan or something like that, just to get us up, and then you can have him after that. But yeah, I mean, 16 goals in 25 starts. And the thing is, Madger was a proper striker. You give him the ball with his back to goal in the box, and he'd take one touch, find half a yard, and it'll be in the bottom corner. And that was what we wanted. I mean, you heard Max Power on the podcast said exactly that. He said it was, even for the players, it was devastating, because they knew what type of player they had. They knew that they just had to get the ball in and around him in the box, and that was it. It was a goal, and that was it. 3 points difference in 3 points, and how many 19 1-1 draws or something we got that season, and we would have went up. So Madger's got to definitely be in there, but like I said, who knows what he would have went on to. But
and by the way, he finished the season top scorer, despite leaving in January.
Exactly.
So
exactly, and Broadhead, he deserves a mention. It's another one. It's a what if. What if he'd stayed fit? Would he get getting 15, 20 goals this season? Who knows? But he's another one who's been struck down with injury. So yeah, it was out of those three for me: Stewart, White, and Madger.
Yeah, totally agree. But yeah, even on Charlie White, we haven't talked about him. I think you've got to talk about Charlie White, considering how many goals he got in that last season. It was 31, 32 goals in his last season with the club. The thing that just sort of masked over that for me was I wasn't actually disappointed when he left, which we all said at the time. It sounds stupid, doesn't it? Saying, we've just lost a 30-odd goal season striker for nothing. We're not bothered. But I don't think many of us were, to be fair. One, because we took into account all of his performance rather than just the goals. And two, I think we'd seen enough of Ross Stewart in that little run towards the end of the season to know that he was being replaced well by a decent player. So we weren't too fussed when he left, but he did score a lot of goals for us in that last season. It's just the 2 seasons before that he was naff. So that's probably why I can't put him in this team, and why I never really fought against you to have 2 up front in in the team that we're picking, because we had half a season out of Madja, we've had basically half a season out of Nathan Broadhead. When you think about how stop-start his season's been, the only thing with him, I just think if he'd stayed fit, he would have probably outscored Stewart, I think.
You think?
I do. I think if he played as many games as Ross Stewart this season and as many minutes, he would have outscored him. I just think he is more of a goal scorer than Stewart is, which sounds stupid. But Stewart, especially by the way, when they play together, plays a different role in the team. Stewart's always better when Broadhead hasn't played with him, I think. I think Stewart, he had that run, didn't he, where Broadhead came into the team after he'd been injured and was scoring, and Stewart stopped scoring. I think he went 8 or 9 games without a goal, didn't he? Broadhead got injured again and Stewart found the net again. It's because his role in the team changed. Broadhead was becoming the sort of the man who played further forward while Stewart did all the donkey work. And I think Ross Stewart ultimately is a better player when he's on his own up there. He's a proper lone striker. I think I listened to the D3, D4 podcast after the Wembley final, and that's what one of the lads on there said. He's a proper lone striker. And how often do you get them in football now? Yeah. You don't really get that many of them. So I'm happy to go with one up front. And I'll be honest, whilst we've got 3 other strikers there who all did a decent job for us in League One, I can't really make the case for any of those ahead of any of the attacking midfielders we picked. No,
definitely not. I mean, like you said, the only one and it is bizarre. It is really strange that we're just kind of completely discounting the 31 goal a season striker. It is strange because 30 goal a season strikers at Sunderland, I mean, I feel like I could probably rattle them off, since I've followed the club anyway. You got Mark Gabardini, then you've got Phillips, then you've got Darren Bent, and you can kind of rattle them off because you remember strikers scoring over 30 goals. But the thing is with Charlie White, I might be really harsh because he had to put them away, but what was Charlie White without Aidan McGeady that season? How many? Yeah. I can't remember the statistic, but it was like 3/4 of his goals came from McGeady's crosses. So I know he still had to do the business and he did brilliant to do it, and it was a fantastic season. I don't want to take anything away from him in that sense, but what was Charlie White without the former Aidan McGeady? So, and the thing is with Charlie White in the team, you had to play a certain way. You couldn't knock it about a bit and slide someone in behind, which with Ross Stewart, you can get the ball wide, you can cross it in, you can play him in behind, you can do 3 or 4 different things to get Ross Stewart in on goal. Whereas with Charlie White, there was only one way of doing it, and that was getting it wide, getting the ball in and getting it on his head. And so, yeah, for me, it has to be Ross Stewart. I mean, he's probably the most complete striker we've had since, I'd say, Kevin Phillips, that he can do multiple different things. He can hold the ball up, he can flick it on, he can run with it, he can get in behind, he can score from 20 yards. Yeah, so it has to be Ross Stewart. And again, he's another one who just did the business, and he was the main reason we got promoted with 27 goals this season. It has to be Ross Stewart.
No, I can't disagree. Ross Stewart for me is the best player we've had at this level. I know I said earlier he had McGeady. You could make I think him and McGeady probably neck and neck, but when you take into account who got the job done, McGeady didn't play really that much of a part in the team that got promoted, and Stewart's just so important to us. Like, I've just said it there. Where do these strikers come from? They don't grow on trees. You don't get Ross Stewart growing on trees. Like, he will be an in-demand player this summer, unfortunately, and we're going to have to really do our best to keep a hold of him, because where else do you get a 6'4" striker who's really quick, really strong, brilliant in the air, has a great first touch, scores goals, works his arse off, can go in behind, over the top, can play in a 2. You probably play him. He's our best defender from corners. Like, he is so good. You said he's the most complete forward we've had since Phillips, and I think you could argue he's more complete. I wouldn't say he was a better player. Phillips was obviously top tier, but like as far as the complete package goes in terms of what he can bring to a team, I can't think of a more complete striker while I've been a Sunderland fan.
Well,
he's just so good, and listen, he's good. It's going to be hard to hang on to him. I mean, I seen him training with the Scotland team on Twitter, and he's just starting to get that bit of attention I don't really like. I'm starting to worry now that there might be a promoted Premier League team and looking at him and thinking he's actually a level above what we think he is. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if he has a good start of the season, and we're coming to that end of August, whether there are teams looking at him. But I don't want to put a dampener on things, ultimately, by talking about the fact that our best player might leave. But Ross Stewart, yeah, if you're going to go with a midfield with 1 holding player and 3 attacking midfielders, he's the man to lead the line in this side, definitely.
Yeah. And I think that argument whether Stewart or Phillips is the most complete player, I think that's a podcast on its own, isn't it?
Yeah. I wouldn't mind seeing them play together. That would be nice.
Wow.
So then, that's our team complete. I'm not going to go with subs. I'm not going to ask for a manager because we all know who would win that.
Yeah, exactly.
Obviously, Alex Neil. So the team we've gone for then, and people listening at home, feel free to email us, tweet us, send us messages on Facebook, whatever else. Give us abuse if you disagree with any of this. But we've gone for a 5 at the back with 1 holding player, 3 attacking midfielders and 1 striker. In goal, we've opted for John Mclaughlin just over Anthony Pattson based on his consistency over 2 seasons in a Sunderland shirt. He was fantastic. Left back was a little bit more difficult for us because it's not like we've had lots of top quality left backs in our time in League One, but we opted for Dennis Sirkin based on the fact that he got us promoted. He was part of the team who got promoted, who kept so many clean sheets in this run towards the end of the season. Right back was a contentious one, but in the end, one that we both agreed on after I threw it into the mix. Luke O'Nien, somebody who has to be in our team really somewhere. When you talk about Sunderland's team of the last 4 years, he's Mr. Consistent. He's Mr. Sunderland. Nobody was more proud and happy than him and Lyndon Gooch really on that pitch at Wembley. He's been just so consistent for Sunderland over a long period in terms of what he's given us in terms of his effort and graft, and Luke O'Nien has to be in that team. I don't think we'll concede many goals with him playing on one side and Sirkin the other. At centre-half, we opted for Bailey Wright through the middle with Jordan Willis just to the right of him, playing that defensive role that he did perhaps under Phil Parkinson, where he got forward and he added to the attack. So it actually, when you think back as well, we didn't talk about this earlier, Chris, but him and O'Nien linked up brilliant, and Maguire actually. Him, O'Nien and Maguire were a brilliant link up down that right-hand side. Yeah. On the left of the 3 is Dion Sanderson, a player who's played in the Championship this year, and I think if he gets it right next season in the Championship with the right team, he'll be a Premier League player soon. Just had all the hallmarks of a top player. I think he's just a little bit unlucky that he plays for a decent Prem team who can't really afford to give him a chance, because he will play there eventually. He is that good, and we were very lucky to have him, and Phil Parkinson was very lucky to have him and just didn't realise it. And then holding the midfield down is Corey Evans, probably the perfect anchor for any team. Just sits in, does the business, keeps things ticking along. Probably a little bit unlucky, Lee Cattermole, that he didn't make the side, but I think if we're talking about the man who got the job done yet again, it's Corey Evans. And then in an attack midfield, we've gone for a trio of Alex Pritchard as the 10, Aidan McGeady on the left, unarguable really, he outstanding player for Sunderland League One. And then on the right, Chris Maguire, who scored just so many important goals in a red and white shirt. And then leading the line, of course, Ross Stewart, who, like I've said repeatedly, is just the best. The best on earth, as the song goes. So yeah, if you disagree with any of that, let us know. I think you're going to be hard pushed to find a better team than that, really, unless you change the system, and that's where maybe people could maybe add another central midfielder into the mix, maybe go with the back 4. But we want to hear your teams, so feel free to let us know. We will be back over the coming days and weeks and months until the season starts with other podcasts, other little features like this. It does offer us a chance, Chris, doesn't it, to do some different stuff. So fingers crossed there'll be more player interviews, there'll be more daft little shows like this where we just get our heads together and dream scenarios up and stuff. But yeah, we will be back, so make sure you check us out and keep subscribed. Cheers, Chris. Thanks for joining us.
Cheers, Gav. Enjoyed it.
You definitely won more of those battles, by the way. I'll let you get away with them. I think the only one I won was Luke O'Nien. Oh no, I got Maguire in.
Yeah, I don't think the debate stops here between me and you with that
No,
team.
no. And thanks to listeners for joining us. We'll catch you later. Cheers.